Good morning, everybody. What's going on? I'm Bevo,
And I'm Robert Rostick.
and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Raising Unmanageables, episode 64.
64.
Is it 64? No, I'm getting word right now that it's 63. I'm getting ahead of myself, man. I do that from time to time. Every now and again, I have a moment of being human.
I think it's a math issue myself.
It is a math. Well, that's always been a problem for me. On the set today, we have Mason Guerin producing our show, and behind the camera, we have Alex Zadarazny, and she's going to make sure we look pretty on this side of the camera. Robert Rostick,
Yes, sir.
how was your weekend?
Oh, it's pretty good. I had, well, I can't say pretty good. I had restless nights for 2 nights, and I had creative thoughts just running through my brain.
Well, that's
and-
good.
Yeah, and it's about how to move forward and how to keep things going.
Hmm.
So I got up and I posted a couple of things on Facebook and the Unmanageables early in the morning, 3 in the morning. That came from me.
I saw that,
Yeah, 3 in the morning. I just couldn't sleep.
and I was wondering, was that a Robert Rostick quote?
Yeah, it was totally a roster quote.
That's nice.
The other one came. It was talking about your house if you want to meet more people, and because you're alone and you're by yourself, then you got to get out of the house. And if you are in a place in a home that you can't stand being in, then you got to get out of the house.
Right.
So both instances, you got to get out of the house.
You got to get out of the house.
Yeah, and do something.
And if you're ever in those positions where you're not getting out of life what you want, you got to
You got to
change your situation.
change the
right?
situation by getting out of the house.
I think that kind of segues into some ideas we were talking about today.
Yeah, you mentioned the topic of branding.
Branding.
Yeah, branding,
Yeah.
and which intrigued me to start this conversation today. So,
And branding is something that we always talk about, so it's not the first time we talked about branding.
Right.
I do think people have preconceived notion of what branding actually is and whether or not it belongs outside of corporate environments and if it can be applied to us as people. And Mason actually has
I think
a
people
question.
have no concept of branding.
Okay, so
That's my point. I think
correction,
people
not a preconceived concept, no concept of branding.
no understanding at all. And I would definitely say that I have learned a lot from being in a relationship with you about what branding is. And I had very minimal, I knew it was more than a logo. I knew that it's a whole feeling
Yep.
and that there's a lot that goes into it. But I did not know
Right.
until I spent all this time with you and was like, oh.
Right.
So I think that in general, the world needs to know.
Yeah. So that's what I know a couple, I've been in a couple interactions or a couple of conversations where branding doesn't apply to people. And they're actually kind of sickened by the idea of us as a personal brand and curating our personal brand. How do you feel about that?
Well, branding starts when you're a baby.
Okay.
The moment you are born, you realize the world revolves around you. And everything is me, my, and it's given to you by your parents because they love you so much. But then to show that they don't love you as much as you thought, they have another kid. And the moment they have the other kid, then you become this point that you're no longer the center of the world, and you start this thing about me and my.
Right.
That's not yours, that's mine.
That's an attention issue.
Yes, it becomes very much an attention issue. So whatever you have and your siblings want, you say no, and you start marking it. You start changing it. You start ripping it. You start doing all kinds of things to make it to let it be known that it's yours. And therein lies where branding begins. It's a matter of this is mine, and I get to choose to celebrate, give it out, hold on to it. It's my choice. and it's an identifier. We do it with our tennis shoes. You know, everybody's wearing these are certain shoes, and then you go in with a different shoe.
Right.
What are you doing? You're branding yourself. We both have these beards. It tells us that we're artists, and people notice, hey, you must be an artist. Branding, it's all in the beginning of it's been there since the beginning of your life.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to articulate with, and that's what I try to articulate with a lot of people with regard to personal branding. Is it's not so much how we think about it in the realm of corporate
No.
companies, because and essentially, actually, what they're trying to do is they're trying to mimic personal behavior, personal emotions, because they're trying to turn their product
Correct.
into a person,
Hmm.
into an idea that we can buy into.
Yes.
So they're actually essentially doing what we're doing, as you stated, as individuals from the beginning. They're
Mhm.
trying to, from the beginning, they want to craft a message that hooks us in emotionally and gets us to interact with it. And that's all we're doing as people, as we're making friends, as we're going on job interviews, as we're just moving about the world. We're trying to get people to understand us and to know how we roll, even when we're not in their presence.
And to be
Right.
a part of our clan based on
Yeah.
our ideology.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting when how we can disassociate the two from each other, because one feels more, it feels ooky, I think, to a lot of people for brand and brand type messaging and tactics rather to be applied to humans outside of the corporate space. When I think, if you think about the word tactic, I just use the word tactic. If you're using tactics, then that's a shitty thing to do in the beginning anyway. Tactics are always, they always come from this place of I'm going to lose out on something because you're going to win on
Right,
a situation, right?
Mhm.
And it's not going to serve me because it's a tactic, right? Because tactics work because one person wins and the other person loses out. But if you're coming from this place of being authentic, and you're coming from this place of really just trying to show people who you are so that
Correct,
you
yeah.
can work with them, then I don't find there's a problem with applying or associating myself with my own personal brand.
No, absolutely not. And I think everyone should have a brand, especially artists, because you're distinguishing. There are a billion artists out there, and there are a billion people who are not artists that call themselves artists. But in order to let people know who you are, let them know your voice
Right.
from the inside out without your presence, you need to brand yourself. So that whenever someone sees something that's related to you or your, if I can quote unquote, brand, then they'll know that that represents not only quality, integrity, loyalty, and high standards. They know that it represents you,
Right.
and that's what it boils down to.
And just to dig deeper into that correlation too, when a company steps outside of its brand promise, right? The thing that it's promising to do for you, even when you're not engaging with it at that time, when it steps outside of that and gives you something other than what it promised you, you become disloyal to that brand
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it broke your trust. And the
That's
same
right.
thing goes with people.
Yes.
If I show up a way in the public and then behind the camera or out of the public view, I'm another way, it's only a matter of time before I break someone's trust in
Absolutely.
their interaction. So we're walking the same paths, and we're always trying to accomplish the same thing, which is trying to get people or moving towards a space where people trust us so that we can serve them and that they can pay us, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And that's that's all it really is, right? It's as simple as that, really.
So, for example, there's a CNN host, Chris Cuomo.
Oh yeah,
Man, I look at that guy and I go, man, he's a smooth, good-looking guy. He speaks well. He knows his stuff. And then he goes to a restaurant or whatever the situation was and has a troll him, and he goes out of character.
right,
And I'm like, that is not the Chris Cuomo I know.
right.
That is not the CNN guy, representative I know. Yeah, I watch Fox 2, guys. So don't even start in that area. But to have that identity, it should be the same off screen as
Right.
it is on screen.
Right. Because what happens is what he shows off screen is who he actually is,
Yeah.
right? Because it's easy to show up for the camera. It's easy to show up and be one way that we think people want to see us as. But him flipping out is exactly who he actually is. And that would work in some circumstances if you present yourself that way, right? So, and I think it really all this, it comes down to in this search of finding out who we are, in this search of how do you present your best self? How do you present yourself as you are all the time? It really is like, how comfortable are you with yourself?
Yes.
All the way down to the sound of your voice. I remember that being an issue for me for a long time. I think we were talking about
it's still an issue for me.
Oh man, it took me a while to hear my own voice and to have it resonate as this is what I want to sound like to people, right? Because I knew that I was consciously changing it because I thought it was what someone else wanted to hear. I thought the pitch, I thought the tones was what someone else wanted to hear. So I was like, let me come up here a little bit because maybe that's a little less intimidating, or I don't know. Everyone around me kind of sounded like that. So I was like, apparently this is what the situation is.
Well, not to be getting inside your head and making you a little uncomfortable, but I love your voice. I think it's so soothing. In fact, since Barry White left us, you've been his replacement for me.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Just smooth. And I just love listening to it. So okay,
Hey.
back to reality. Branding.
Coffee break.
Yeah. So guys, I mean, basically what we're saying is that whatever you develop as yourself, whatever you define as yourself, whatever being is yourself, then make that your brand.
Right. And pay attention to it. Like write it down. Like if there's certain things you like about your voice, write it down. I was like, I'd like this part about my voice. Write it down. Hold on. I like what red shoes at the end of my wardrobe means, you know, when I'm wearing all black or a different monotone kind of wardrobe, and then I have on red shoes. I like my belt buckles and my belts, and like I like all those things. Like all those things make up what people are going to view you as and say, you know what, like that person, I can identify that person even when they're not here, and I can hear. I always find it interesting when there's someone who really resonates with me, or their voice resonates, them as a person resonates with me. When I get an email from them or a text message from them and I read it, I can hear their voice in my head.
That's right.
Like that's, to me, is achieving so many things, right? And I want to just reach out to that person and say, stop right here. Like this is who you are. Like you found it. Don't go past this point because you have already like put a nail in what it is to be you, because every time I hear or read something from it, I can hear your voice, and that's a hard thing to do on many occasions. Mason Gary.
So my thought was, what would be if someone's like, okay, they want to, polish and put together what their personal brand moving forward. This is them. They're ready to do it. What would be like 5 things or 3 things or whatever to focus on or to decide this is their thing? Like, should they talk to people or not talk? Like, personal friend, do you ask your mom? Do you make a list?
Yeah, definitely make a list. And I've actually done this too. I wrote down and I called 5 people and I was like, hey, what are qualities about me that you like? Right? Good or bad? And preferably good, because I'm trying to move into a good direction. So your bad comments are just going to backslide a little bit. But what are things that stand out to you when I'm not here? And I just took the average of all those things and started paying attention to them. And the average people they said the same things, right? So I took those things and personally just worked on them, right? So all the way down to literally, I say to you, what does your voice sound like? Don't change it. work on it. If you don't like the sound of it, what don't you like about it, and then just work on getting used to it. What you wear. Don't wear shit that you don't want, that you're not comfortable in. I always show up to I used to show up when I was looking for jobs to interview the same way I was going to go to work every day, right? I didn't put on a suit or khakis and a polo to show up to work and then turn around and then to show up to an interview and then turn around and go to work in t-shirts and blue jeans.
That's correct.
You know what I mean? So I always I kept it reasonable, right? But I always showed up exactly how I was going to show up to work the very next day, right? Make lists about things that you want to improve on, and then just work on them, really.
And my advice to branding or any cause that you want to change or become is to commit to it. And I think that's where we fall down. We're constantly changing because we think that no one is seeing us. So we'll change our hair, we'll change our speech, we'll change our walk, and none of it is us. None of it is, because when you commit to something, when you come down and say, hey, look, this is going to be me, and you do that consistently over and over and over again, then you develop your following. Then it becomes you. And whatever you constantly practice on becomes you, then people start to identify you as that.
Right.
But you have to commit to it,
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're going to do. I have this thing that every time I see blue hair, now, used to be when I saw blue hair, it was like old people.
Old lady.
Yeah, but now when I see blue hair, I don't care where I am, I think of Mason. I automatically think of Mason.
Right.
And whenever I see a painting out there, I go, this is not like Mason's. I keep going. And that's because of her videos where she will paint stuff and then instantly get rid of it. So I've come to know her that way. And whenever she talks, it's a soft sound, and I really like it. So because of that consistency, she's in my head.
Right.
And the same way you are in my head, whenever you talk about wanting to do things that are about growth and about creative growth, immediately you come to mind. So whatever you do out there and whatever you decide, just commit. Commit will take you a long way in your relationships, in your business, in your job. Just commit to it.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that developmental part of it. Like, keep developing it and commit to the development of it, right?
That's what it is.
And if you're doing things that aren't on brand, just like in advertising, they get rid of that shit. Like, they cut it out. If your client is doing anything that is deemed not on brand, they stop it, because you're breaking. As soon as you do it, you're breaking the promise. You're breaking the trust between that product and the consumer, right? So it's the same thing. If you're doing something that you're like, or you've adapted a habit, or you're doing something that you don't want to be in your personal brand, and it's not on target with who you want to be, cut it. But you only can do that if you're documenting and observing personally the things that you want to portray.
Look at Mike Tyson.
On brand all the time.
All the time. You know what you're getting completely the moment he walks in this room.
Right.
It's on target.
Right.
So, and you even look at Donald Trump, and I know I'm not bringing politics in it, but the moment Donald opens his mouth, there's going to be news on it that night.
Right.
He has not broken.
And
his
it's never
brand.
and it's never a surprise.
Never is.
And that's the whole point too. Good or bad, like
Good or bad, it doesn't
however you
matter.
view the person, you shouldn't be a surprise.
And
Right.
but you should always represent the quality of what you're going to put out.
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely. And I think that's super important when you talk about you look at Mike Tyson, he's been called crazy through his whole career. But then people will still sit down with him and do business with him and want to have conversations with him, because he's never shown us this other side that makes us not trust him as a person.
Because you know what
Right?
you're getting.
You know what you're getting
The
into.
moment, the moment,
Right.
the moment he steps in the room, you know exactly what you're getting.
And if you wake up the bear, you get that.
That's exactly. That's Robin Givens.
That's right.
So my thoughts are, since we're kind of talking about celebrity examples of people who are
Mhm.
always showing up on brand, who are people who have broken it, who have broken your trust or broken the brand promise that you could give an example of?
Ooh.
See, there's so many people so for me, I think Kanye West has broken a lot of people's brand
Oh
promise.
my goodness.
But for me, Kanye West has always been kind of the same person. So for me, I still believe in him because I look at the lineage and I'm like, he's always been this way. And he just struggles with that whole thing of he only wants to be a creative to the point where it disrupts everything else around him, and it allows him to be almost manic sometimes. You know what I mean? And perceived to be that way. So I always stick with him because when I look at what he's done, that transcendent music,
Sure.
brilliant. His artwork, brilliant.
Got it.
His fashion, brilliant. He's changing the game as far as fashion goes. So those situations like that, because I understand him to have been the same way,
Mhm.
he hadn't broken his brand promise with me.
He's
Right.
certainly broken it with me. Because sometimes I don't mind. In fact, I think everyone has a position in politics.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone does. But the problem is, with him, is that he's waffled. That's where I have the problem. Is that, okay, if you're going to come out on the world stage and act as though you're one way,
Mm-hmm.
and then 6 months later, in order to your new album is coming out, you act a different way, then that's sort of a problem with me.
I can see that,
Yeah.
but he's talked about it being a mental health issue from his perspective as well too, and him going through those things. So I can see it both ways because we that'll be
Who else?
Who
Kanye's.
else? Kanye's he's just always
situation.
inflammatory. But I like him just because he is that way.
I can't really think of someone to call them out to say that they are disloyal. I know that
Or maybe a brand itself.
I'll cite an example of one
a
guy.
brand. What brands are there that have what brands have broken your trust?
Let me just tell you about this one guy. When I was growing up, this guy would speak on the radio a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and he would, and coming from a lower socioeconomic environment that I lived in Alabama in the projects, the guy was from the projects,
Right.
and he would get on radio and just talk like he was the richest guy in the world. He denounced his neighborhood, everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he came back to the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
he would be like he wanted loyalty from us.
Mm-hmm.
That set me, it set my hair on fire
Mhm.
because I never wanted to be that person. That was two people in one.
Right.
I always wanted to be that one person that was, what you see is what you get. And you're going to get it consistently. Doesn't mean that you can't evolve and you can't change. But in the matter of about 8 hours,
Mm-hmm.
he's on the radio, he's one way. Comes home, completely different. And the neighborhood didn't care for him.
Right.
But there was another type of neighborhood that loved him.
Right.
And I never wanted to be that way. If you're going to love me, you're going to love me whole.
Right.
You're going to love what I represent. And yeah, there are going to be things that you don't like about me. Just as I drink Coke, I don't like the fact that you can take Coca-Cola and pour it on a battery and clear up all the acid around it. But yeah, I still drink it.
And that's 100% the reason I don't drink Coke. Just because of that, I'm like, you can clean a battery.
But you know that Coca-Cola at one point changed their formula. And the whole world got upset about it.
Yeah, because
New Coke.
they weren't getting high anymore.
Well,
Oh, we're not talking about that far back. Oh, we're
No.
talking about. Oh, okay.
no.
Anyway, Robert, as we bring this episode to a close, I hope we addressed it. And there's always more work to be done
Sure.
and more conversation to be had around it. But I think for anybody who does watch and listen in, it really start now. And that's always our remedy for a lot of things. If we're going to be prescriptive, is start and then just take baby steps on it and put together lists. Ask your friends. Ask the people that you really, really trust that are really going to give you real feedback and aren't going to blow smoke up your ass, or they're going to joke around with you. Don't ask feedback from those people because you won't get anything productive. Ask someone who's going to tell you the truth and tell you what you're doing wrong, what you're not doing wrong, what they like about you, and then tally them up and see if those are things you like about yourself and if those are things you want to put out into the world. And I think that's the quickest way to getting back to, or to start on the road of functioning as yourself and showing up as yourself and branding yourself, messaging yourself, and starting to tell a better story around you as a person.
Now, one thing that I want to back up to before we let go of the subject is that I do want to know the negatives. I want to know how others see me as negative, and that's a reflection. It's usually a reflection of what they are bringing to the table when they see.
I think so. I want to make clear, it's not about getting all A's, right?
Like, no. That's
but
correct.
You don't want to have these conversations with people who are, one, going to not tell you the truth, or two, they're going to joke around with you in that instance, right? They're going to tell you blood raw, I like this about you, I don't like this about you, right? And then you take that, and those are the things you start making your comments off of. Right. But I'm talking about if you're getting negativity from someone who doesn't take you seriously, I don't even take that seriously.
Oh, I understand. That was exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
That when people bring in total negative, it tells you about who they are.
Right.
More so than who you are. And that's also a something to look out for too, as part of your branding. You're saying, I do not want to market to this particular person, or I don't want to be around that particular person.
Yeah.
So
again, valid as conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Love this conversation. And everybody, we have 2 pages. We have a Unmanageables Facebook page, and we have a Being Unmanageables group page. Please subscribe to both of those pages. Invite people, especially to the group page. Let's start having some bigger conversations in there. And like, share, comment.
And we'll be looking at those comments that you put on the page, and maybe the topic that you brought up on one of those pages, one of those times, might be something that we'll feature here.
Absolutely. So this week, thank you for checking in. Raising Unmanageables, episode 63. I'm Bebo.
And I'm Robert Rostick, reminding you to take time out of your day, almost every day, and be unmanageable.
Appreciate it.